the cross, 4 parts. And the Ark of the Covenant was supposed to be in the center, symbolizing the presence of God, supposed to be the centerpiece in the life of the church, in the life of God's people. Also show you in government, in the Old Testament, where God gave Moses the Mosaic law and gave the law. There were laws for the government and the laws of setting up things according to the leading and the government of God's Spirit. How Israel had to do things in the government by law, and it separated the law, the government, state, and religion. And how I gave a point to another church, how even now the government is trying to look at religion and churches not as a religious state, but as a business state. Why do you say that? Because if anybody knows business, the executive board of church, you know what I'm talking about. When it comes down to being tax exempt, every church is identified by a 10 number by the government. And that 10 number gives, in other words, that's the number that you represent in order to evade from paying taxes. A lot of people, what they do to evade from paying taxes, they try to form a church to see their church, but the tax ID number identifies the church as a corporate entity separated from others, but they know church, the government, as a church as business. Even as a church building, even though you don't pay tax like everybody else tax, but you have certain things that you have to pay by law because they look at you as a commercial property, and commercial property is known as business. They identify the church as a business, and because they do, what has happened now, this is why they're trying now, the government is trying to work in such a way to separate the church from religion and make us non-existent from taxes. They're trying to figure a way of taxing the church. The church say amen. But again here, you may ask, well, what's in the church? Here, Jesus made a point. The purpose of the church, when Jesus said that he led captivity captive to give gifts to men, the purpose of the church was to be the continuation of what he done here on earth. The fivefold ministry, and I gave a detailed talk about the fivefold ministry, how it's very vital when people acknowledge that there are apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers. If you search out the history of the church and the birth of the church, when Jesus said it was finished, and the curtain was ripped from top to bottom, that was the beginning of grace and God coming to man. But when Jesus went into glory, and you read Acts chapter 1 and 2, you know, infallible proof, being within 40 days, and the birth of Pentecost, that was the birth of the church. And then from the church, and the essence of the church was a part of himself. Out from the side came water and blood, the water representing the washing of the word, or the word, and the blood representing the forgiveness of sins, purging and cleansing by the forgiveness of sin. But the birth of the church was a part of the ribcage, the fivefold ministry. And from the fivefold ministry came elders, ministers, bishops, deacons. Acts of the Apostles tell us this. All made it plain and said, listen, they ordained bishops and elders and deacons in every city that they may give themselves completely under fasting and prayer. Now, somebody will ask, well, what is an apostle? Apostolos means apostle, which means overseer, someone that's a father figure, someone whose ministry consists of consistent signs and wonders, confirming the gospel, signs and wonders confirming the sick being healed, confirming folks being delivered, confirming the manifestation of God's Spirit. The prophet, his job is to be the seer. His job is to inspire the people, inspire them to turn from their way to serve God. His ministry, that when he speaks something, or she speaks something, prophetess, it's supposed to come to pass. God deals with the present, past, and future. And God will give a glimpse of the past and tell you the present. How he prophesied, or she prophesies, deal with foretells and foretells. Foretells mean what is going to take place. Foretells is what is constantly occurring in life. What is supposed to be consistent in our lives is the gifts of the Spirit, of the word of knowledge and prophecy. People feel, well, I see a prophet, he's supposed to prophesy all the time. No, that's not true. When the prophet comes, he may operate under the word of knowledge. And the word of knowledge, the definition of that is a supernatural revelation gift of God to know the mind and will of plan of God and the mind and plan of will of men. So in other words, they speak, and here's the degree of the word of knowledge that God gives the prophet, or even the apostle, that they can see things in such detail. When they tell you something that God has given them to tell you, it's so specific, it's so precise, it marks. Now, I'll give you a little more illustration. If you look at your hands, people look at your hands, you know that it's your big kingdom and your